Well, I didn't ask you just now. When people get grants, they never pay it back, right?
Correct. There are some occasions where if you have violated the covenant or the contract, they could ask for their money back because you did not fulfill the contract. You asked for $300,000 and you promised to reach 500 fourth graders, and within 2 years that they would be reading on grade level or above. You get to a year and a half and you've only reached 100 fourth graders and none of them are on level. You might be in a situation where you might be asked to pay that money back because you didn't fulfill the contract. There's also been times when grants have been awarded and the recipient did not expend the money in the time allotted. And so grants are not open-ended. You can hold on to this money, for the next 10 years or whatever. You have a certain amount of time to accomplish the purpose that you stated in your grant application. And let's say you make it to that time and you accomplished the goal, but you didn't expend all the funds, they could ask for their money back. Again, I cannot stress enough that it's not free money. What it is a relationship, a financial relationship, a financial covenant, a financial contract that says, this is my purpose. I'm going to do this, this, and this by this date with this verifiable result if I get X amount of dollars from you. And if those terms are not met, then, you've breached the contract. And sometimes there are consequences for that, like give the money back.
Mm-mm. And that can be very harsh sometimes for people to
Yeah.
hear. Yeah, I get that. All right. So, how can people access this money? Where can they find this money, this grant, so they can apply for them?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question and tag back just a little to a question you asked earlier with regards to how do you get informed? Where do you get the grants? I heard you say, yeah, if you've got a for-profit business and for-profits typically are not eligible for grants, is there any nonprofit function that you could kind of call out so that you would be eligible for grants? I thought that was a brilliant point, and I want to, you don't mind, Obehi, I want to go there and then talk
Please.
about. Okay. And so I'll give you some examples. Target, for those of you who shop at Target and you really love Target, you may call it Target like the rest of us, because it is not like Walmart. Target can get pretty pricey. Well, Target also has a nonprofit corporation, meaning so Target is for profit, but then they have a nonprofit that gives grants and makes awards to community organizations, particularly those who are improving community economic outcomes, right? Walmart, Walmart, they make what? $1 quadrillion or whatever, they make. Well, Walmart also has a foundation, and Walmart gives grant awards to nonprofit organizations who have the 501c3 status for projects that they value. So ExxonMobil has a foundation. Racetrack has a foundation. You guys, if you think of any particularly multinational corporation, more than likely they have a foundation, meaning they have a for-profit that's all about business, and then they have a foundation. They have another entity whose goal it is to make some sort of service or product that is for the common good. Typically, the foundation reflects the business that they're in. So, for example, ExxonMobil cares about environmentalism, clean air, reducing carbon. So the areas in which they give their grants kind of align to the reason they're in business, right? Similarly to Target. And so when you look at a nonprofit organization that's attached to a multinational company, the areas in which they want to give, the grants that they award are somehow connected to the business that they're in. What does that mean for your followers and your listeners, Obehi? If they are in business, meaning they have an enterprise, they're an entrepreneur, and there is no nonprofit arm, there is no auxiliary, there is no augment to it, that's about improving the community, they might want to consider creating a 501c3. It would have its own EIN, its own, in your state, wherever you are, its own certificate of formation as a nonprofit corporation. And then you would apply to the IRS to get your 501c3. You can even keep it the same name as your business name, but slap the word foundation on the end, or charities on the end, so that people are able to distinguish between your for-profit enterprise, you as a small business owner, and this nonprofit that you have. And then just make sure that the purpose of the nonprofit relates to the reason you're in business, but the nonprofit provides a good or a service. And again, that doesn't mean you can't charge for the good or service, you can't make money, but the point is that it's not about the profit, it's about providing that service. So now let me get back to the question you raised. How do people begin to figure out where the grants are? Well, I'm going to answer that question by explaining that there are three huge buckets of grants, and then I'll tell you how you can begin to figure out what's going on. One bucket is what I like to call the private foundations, meaning that these are funds that are held either by a family, a very, very wealthy family, a very, very wealthy individual, or an organization that manages the money on behalf of that wealthy individual or that wealthy family. So here in Dallas, we have like 15 billionaires in Dallas County. I'm not exaggerating. There are 15 billionaires, last count, in
That's
Dallas
interesting.
County. In one county, we have 15 billionaires. And so one of our billionaires is Mark Cuban, who owns the Mavericks. And so Mark Cuban created the Maverick Foundation. The Maverick is a sports franchise. It owns stuff and it sells stuff and it does games and it has these people on its roster who play for them, right? But Mark Cuban is also a philanthropist. He cares about what's going on in Dallas. And because of his business, which is the sports business, his nonprofit cares about athleticism, the health of children, education, computer literacy. And so the majority of the grants that the Maverick Foundation gives are in areas that reflect the heart of the owner, the man who started, who owns the Mavericks, right? And so these private foundations tend to be held by either an individual who's wealthy, a family that's wealthy, or an organization that manages the philanthropy of that wealthy individual or that wealthy family. So private foundations are one pot of money. Then we have corporate foundations. I explained that most multinational companies have a foundation. Bank of America has a foundation. ExxonMobil has a foundation. Walmart has a foundation. Target has a foundation. So when you look at what you're interested in with regards to what good or service you're going to do to better mankind or better your community or help stray animals or help people with Alzheimer's, whatever weighs on your heart, you want to look for the for-profit multinational companies that care about that same thing. Because I can guarantee you that if that multinational company cares about that same thing, their nonprofit and foundation gives grants to nonprofits who also care about that. So we have private foundations owned by a wealthy individual, a wealthy family, or an organization that manages the philanthropy of the wealthy individual, wealthy family. Private foundation. Then we have corporate foundation, multinational companies that also have a nonprofit function, and they give grants as well. The last pot is the biggest pot. It has the most stable and recurring grants in it, and they're kind of tough to get as well. That's the public area. In the public area, we have federal grants, which tend to be multi-million and multi-year or six-figure and multi-year. And then once you get in with an agency and they give you some money, you tend to kind of be their pet, and it's easier and easier to get money year after year. Then we have state. So your particular state will give grants in various areas. Then we have county, and then we have city. So these public grants, basically, and you might be thinking, Dr. Atkins, you're making this up, is your money. It's my money and it's your money. Those public grants are tax dollars at work. Um, from things that were sold, there were taxes, to paying income tax, to recreation tax, to luxury taxes. All that money making money.